We do know that United are looking at alternatives. There's been talk of Youssouf Fofana from Monaco. There's been talk of Real Sociedad's Martin Zubimendi. The one you mentioned just there that Laurie Whitwell was speaking about, Burnley Sanderberg, which kind of came from left field. But he is a player that Manchester United have got an interest in.
Jay here, Stretford, Paddock. This is the one-on-one interview, and joining us, as always, is a friend of the channel. It's Dharmesh Sheth from Sky Sports. Dharmesh, good to see you again. It's been a little while since me and you spoke. Joe usually does these things. Yeah. Still a lot going on with Manchester United. We're getting towards the sort of the business end of the transfer window, shall we say, and there's still a lot of rumours, reports going on about what Manchester United are going to do. We'll start with one you've been speaking about, and this is Jadon Sancho, and ties in a little bit with Manuel Ugarte from PSG. Just tell us a little bit about that. What's the latest going on there? Could there be some sort of swap deal? Could this be one player going into PSG, another one coming in? What's your understanding of it?
I think there'd be separate deals. I think with regard to Jadon Sancho, I know we had these issues with Eric Ten Hag and Jadon Sancho throughout the whole of back end of last season. And then in the summer, everyone made up and drew a line under all of their issues, back in first team training, went on the tour, reintegrated into the first team and all the activities to do with the first team. However, this hasn't stopped interested parties remaining interested in Jadon Sancho. Earlier on in the window, it was all about Juventus and Borussia Dortmund, but they were not able to do a deal to meet Manchester United's valuation. The latest club that has an interest is Paris Saint-Germain. And the latest information I have is that PSG have actually held initial talks with Manchester United over the signing of Jadon Sancho. They've basically explored the conditions of a potential deal. As far as Jadon Sancho is concerned, we understand that he would be open to a move to Paris. Personal terms not expected to be a problem. But before we get, really into it and say this is massively new and, PSG have just opened talks with United over Sancho, you've got to remember that there's been open dialogue between the two clubs throughout the summer because United have been interested and very interested in their midfielder, Manuel Ugarte. So that's where the talks have already begun anyway. So you'd expect there to be some sort of relationship between the two clubs for them to continue talks on whatever player that each club is interested in. But as it stands, those talks have happened over Jadon Sancho, and it's clear that PSG are interested in the player.
Just in terms of United's midfield, obviously you mentioned Ugarte there. There's been other names mentioned. Where do we stand at the minute in terms of who's the most likely candidate, who United are really looking at? Because there's been so many names bandied about. I'm losing count this morning. Sanderberg from Burnley was mentioned, which is a bit of a left field one, but I think it was Laurie Whitwell who mentioned it. He's usually, he's reliable. Reliable. He's always a reliable journalist. So there must be something in that. What's your take on the latest sort of goings on when it comes to United chasing midfielders?
Yeah, so it's clearly an area that they do want to strengthen. We do know that Manuel Ugarte is still a player of interest. However, he's not of interest to United at the prices being quoted by Paris Saint-Germain. Now, PSG signed him for, I think, around £50 million from Sporting Lisbon last summer. They want to make a profit on Manuel Ugarte in this summer's transfer window. And we're talking like around a €70 million price tag. United don't want to go anywhere near that kind of price tag. So while they're still looking at a permanent deal for Manuel Ugarte, they're also exploring the potential of a loan deal that may come with an option that turns into an obligation as well. And maybe United are just taking a step back from Ugarte and just having a look at what's happening at PSG, because yesterday, as we record this, they've actually made a big signing in the defensive midfield area. They've signed João Neves from Benfica for close to £50 million. And when you spend that much money on a player, particularly when the player who's already in that position in Ugarte didn't have the best season for them last season with regard to the number of appearances that he made, that probably didn't get as much football that he wanted. Probably PSG were expecting a little bit more from him and more appearances from him. And they brought in someone who effectively is going to play in his position. Neves is going to play for PSG. So United are probably looking at that and thinking, well, if you've signed this player, maybe you're still even more keen than you were before to do a deal with Ugarte. So if that's the case, there's no way we're going to go right up to this valuation that you've got for Manuel Ugarte. It could be one that rumbles on throughout the rest of this transfer window. We do know that United are looking at alternatives. There's been talk of Youssouf Fofana from Monaco. There's been talk of Real Sociedad's Martin Zubimendi. The one you mentioned just there that Laurie Whitwell was speaking about, Burnley's Sander Berg, which kind of came from left field. But he is a player that Manchester United have got an interest in and have been looking at as well. And don't rule out Sofian Amrabat. We know that he came on loan last season, joined on deadline day last summer. That deal came with a 20 million euro option price. United don't want to pay the option fee, but they still retain an interest in Amrabat. And I think they've continued to have an open dialogue with Fiorentina about bringing that price down. So I don't think you can rule out Amrabat maybe making a return to United, be it on a permanent deal, though they're exploring a loan deal as well. Now, I think a lot of people might look at this and think, is this a kind of a scattergun approach that United are adopting here? I look at it in a very different way, because this is very different to how United have adopted their approach in previous transfer windows, because it felt like they would make a deal like maybe a departure and think, who are we going to sign? Whereas this time, I think what they want to do is get deals down the line as far as they can, maybe agreed in principle with 2, 3, 4 targets. And then in the eventuality a player does leave from the football club, then they are in a position where they can go straight in and make a signing for another player, be it an Amrabat, be it a Sander Berg or a Zubimendi or an Ugarte. So they don't want to be left short like maybe they have done in previous windows. And then we see that rush come deadline day when it seems like it's panic stations then.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we've spoken to you on a lot of deadline days when Manchester United have been almost scrambling. Like you say, it feels panicky. It doesn't feel like it's sort of part of a plan when you've got players coming in at the 11th hour. One player that is more or less done, I think you tweeted earlier on today about him having a medical, is Obi Martin coming into Manchester United. But you can tell us a little bit more about this deal, because there was all these rumours, and a lot of it came from Arsenal fans, I think, that it was just about money. That he left Arsenal. There's obviously this highly sought after youngster. He's scoring loads of goals, breaking all sorts of records. The line from a lot of Arsenal fans was that he just left Arsenal because he was going to get more money at Manchester United. But that's not the case, is it?
Well, first of all, status of the deal. We're told that he's in Manchester now ahead of a medical. Terms have been agreed with between Manchester United and Chido Obi Martin and his representatives. So that deal looks like it is going to get done. Now, if you go back earlier in the summer, he's obviously with Arsenal. He had agreed a deal with Arsenal, a contract. That had been agreed. So that wasn't the problem. The contract wasn't the problem. It's our information that the reason he wanted to leave Arsenal and not sign that contract is because of the pathway to the first team and also the project that Arsenal were offering. He felt that his career development would be best served if he was to leave Arsenal. And there were lots of offers for him. United were one. There were a lot of German clubs who were interested in Obi Martin as well. And it's my information that the move that he's making is not financially motivated. And that's highlighted by the fact that the German offers were actually superior to what United were offering. But coupled with the offer that's on the table from United and the potential pathway into the first team and the United project, all of that combined convinced Chido Obi Martin that it was probably the best move for him to go to Manchester United rather than stay with Arsenal or indeed go to Germany.
Yeah, it does make sense, and I'm looking forward to seeing. I know it's going to be a little while yet. I think we have to be patient because he's still only a kid, but he certainly seems like a very exciting player. We'll just ask you a little bit about defence quickly before we move on, because obviously United bought in Lenny Yoro, very exciting signing. Everyone's shoved to bits, beat Real Madrid to his signature. He's out for 3 months. Now, even before that, there was reports that we were going to try and bring in another centre-back. Jared Branthwaite was a name that was being bandied about alongside Matthijs de Ligt, who's been a long-term sort of, I wouldn't say a target, but he's been linked with United over the years quite a few times. What's the latest there? Can you see United bringing in another centre-back? Do you think that could happen, or is it because of the sort of the finances that United might have to settle with what we got?
Right. I mean, Erik ten Hag alluded to this as well, and this was the information we had before he was speaking, following that US tour and following that injury to Lenny Yoro. And just because he got injured, that wasn't going to be the reason United went in for another central defender, because They don't want to replace Lenny Yoro because he's going to be back within 3 months. I think the approach has remained the same. Manchester United will go into the market for another central defender if there is a departure in that area. The two key points to make for the remainder of this transfer window for United is budget and squad space. That's what would have to happen for them to go into the market, not only at centre back, but for any position. We've been talking about the midfield area. We've been talking about the winger area. We've been talking about the right back area as well, which I'm sure we will in a moment. Yep. But if there is to be a departure in the central defensive area, a further departure, and you're looking at Victor Lindelof there because he's courted quite a bit of interest, particularly from Fenerbahce. You can see the link there. Jose Mourinho is the manager out there in Fenerbahce. He was the manager at United when Victor Lindelof signed. So that is definitely one to watch. If he was to get sold, it would create a little bit of budget, whatever the transfer fee would be and the saving on the wages. Plus, more insignificantly, it would mean that squad space would be created. And that's when United would go into the market to try and bring in a central defender. And we've been talking about a number of names. The one that won't go away is Matthijs de Ligt. Jared Branthwaite at the moment looks like it might be just out of reach for United just now because Everton don't need to sell and they don't want to sell. So that's where Everton's stance is at the moment. Unless United go up to the £70 million plus range, then you might be able to talk about a potential arrival for Jared Branthwaite. But as it stands, they're open dialogue with Bayern Munich over Matthijs de Ligt.
That makes a lot of sense. I'm going to talk about outgoings in a minute. Just before we do, I just want to ask you about the striker situation because obviously Rasmus Højlund's injured. Even with him fit, there was still a couple of rumours and rumblings that maybe Manchester United would be looking at reinforcements when it came to the striking department. There's all this talk in there that United might end up playing Jadon Sancho as a striker because we're a little bit short. I know obviously we brought in Joshua Zirkzee. Marcus Rashford can play down the middle, although I'm not a massive fan of him in that position, if I'm being brutally honest. Where do you think United are with a striker? Can you see that happening? Because obviously any striker that United would want to bring in, someone who scores goals, it's going to cost a lot of money.
Yes, and rather like what I explained about the Lenny Yoro situation, look, Rasmus Højlund's injured and Zirkzee is just getting up to speed, and that's the reason they're talking about Jadon Sancho potentially playing down the middle for United in that opening game against Fulham. But that wouldn't be a reason for United to go into the market to bring in a striker. So it will come down to budgets, but also priority as well. I think as it stands, there are higher priorities in that squad than a striker. They've already brought in Zirkzee, as you mentioned. They got Rasmus Højlund. He's going to miss 6 weeks. And if you think about it, part of that period that he'll be out is covered by an international break as well. So he won't be missing as many games as it looks like when you look at 6 weeks. That's a long time. Whereas, he'll definitely miss the first 3. And then once the international break is over, then you're starting to think about, well, is Rasmus Højlund going to be on his way back or not? You'd think that possibly he would be. So I don't think, again, that would be a reason for United to go into the market. If there are departures in that area, again, that's when United will start looking at players. But who do you replace? Who needs replacing in the striking department just now when you've got Rasmus Højlund, who just signed last summer, and Zirkzee, who's just come in? So I don't think it's the priority position just now for Manchester United because there are so many other areas. We're talking about right back, centre midfield, potentially centre half that would probably be higher in the pecking order over a striker.
No, I agree. It would be nice to see United bringing in another striker. I can't really see it happening. I'd be very surprised if United did end up bringing anyone in. And like you say, the injury to Rasmus Højlund, it's only a short-term injury. So hopefully we can get him back sooner rather than later. Let's talk about outgoings because you keep mentioning it. Obviously, this thing about budget and squad space. There's a lot of players that have been linked with the move. We'll start with Aaron Wan-Bissaka, the obvious one. There's interest from West Ham. Where are we up to with that one? Can you see that deal happening? It feels like it is going to happen, to me anyway. It's just a question of when rather than if. What's the latest on that one?
Jay, I've been saying it's been close for like weeks. I'm trying to find different ways of saying close. What we do understand is that West Ham United are still pushing to sign Aaron Wan-Bissaka. Wan-Bissaka himself seems like he's open to the move. Personal terms not expected to be a problem. It's coming down to the fee and the structure of the payment. And maybe there's even talk about Wan-Bissaka leaving United and what kind of package he'll get when he leaves United. I think we had this issue when we're talking about Harry Maguire last summer when he was leaving potentially from Man United to West Ham then. So that could be an issue as well. But as it stands, it looks like it's going in a forward direction. It looks like there's a willingness from all parties to get that deal done. And if and when that happens, United, like I was saying about being proactive, about bringing in a replacement, they're ready to press play on that deal with Bayern Munich and Nusem Mazraoui. So that there's a lot of stuff that has been agreed. A lot of the details have been agreed on that deal with Bayern Munich. So it's not going to be a case of selling Aaron Wan-Bissaka and then starting from zero, trying to get a deal done with Mazraoui. They've had lots of talks with Bayern Munich. Personal terms not expected to be a problem with the player, and the player wants to go as well.
We always love the word imminent when we're running out of words to use when it's like deal close. Yeah. That's the one we always pivot to when it's like keep saying deal close. We've been there ourselves a lot of the times, but yeah, it does feel like that's going to happen. Like you say, obviously United have got someone lined up as well. I'll be sad to see Aaron Wan-Bissaka go, but we won't go into that because we'll be here all day. There's other players as well. I'm just going to power through some of these. Victor Lindelof been linked with a move. Seems to be way down the pecking order, even with the injury to Lenny Yoro. Anything on that one?
Yeah, I mean, that's like I mentioned before. I think, there has been interest from Fenerbahce that United are in that position, not only with Lindelof, but with Wan-Bissaka, as we mentioned before. They're both in the final year of their contract. And with both of them, there hasn't been any sign that there's going to be talks over an extension to that contract. So they are going to be listening to offers for them. The Wan-Bissaka one, of course, feels further down the line than anything to do with Lindelof. Lindelof and Wan-Bissaka, they both played during the tour as well. So that will give you some sort of clue about how far at the time those deals were. So you would expect the Wan-Bissaka one to accelerate now. With Lindelof, they do want to do something because, like I mentioned before, they can't really go and pursue the De Ligt deal properly until they've created that squad space that Victor Lindelof would vacate if he was to leave the football club. So it's still one to watch, I think. It's not that much information that we're getting around Lindelof other than there is interest in the player, but as yet, no formal bids have gone in for him. But I think those bids are expected to come in. And if you're a buying club who's trying to go in for Victor Lindelof, it's probably in your interests as well to leave it as late as you can in a transfer window, only because the later you go, with him not signing a new contract and not being offered one, the lower the price is going to become, because towards the end of the window, United are thinking, oh, he's 5 months away from being able to sign a pre-contract with this foreign club for no money at all. We don't want to get in that position, so let's just try and get as much money as we can at this stage.
And there's just two players finally in the midfield department, big names as well, Casemiro and Scott McTominay. Can you see either of them, both of them, leaving in the summer transfer window?
The Casemiro one looked hotter earlier on in the transfer window. There was a lot of Saudi Arabia interest. That could come back. That could be revisited. Of course it could. At the moment, it's cooled. But who's to say that they won't try and come back later on in the transfer window? Scott McTominay, that one looks like it's live at the moment. Fulham have had two bids, and they've both been rejected, £17 million and £20 million. They are now discussing internally whether they're going to go back in with an improved offer. It would probably require Manchester United to compromise on their valuation of McTominay for Fulham to come back to the negotiating table. Fulham, for their part, have got alternative targets as well. They're looking at Fluminense's Andre, and they've got a long-standing interest in him, but there is a long-standing interest in McTominay as well. So we're just waiting to see whether the gap in valuation is surmountable or not. If it isn't, then Fulham will move on to other targets. But we mentioned these names that United are interested in before, and we're talking about this one-in, one-out process. So we talked about Ugarte, we've talked about Zubamendi, Fofana, Amrabat, Sander Berg. One or two of those players could yet come to United, provided there are two departures in the central midfield area. And the two to watch are the ones that you've mentioned in Casemiro and McTominay.
Well, we'll keep an eye on. Obviously, we'll be getting updates from you. And I think the key words there, as you said earlier, is budget and squad space. So we're going to have to see what happens with the budget and the squad space as well. Dharmesh, it's always a pleasure. We're going to be chatting to you again during the transfer window. And obviously, anyone who's watching can go and check out. You don't need me to tell you where to find Dharmesh. You know where you find him. You find him on Sky Sports News, giving us updates. But it's always a pleasure. Dharmesh, thanks for chatting to us. And we'll chat to you again soon.
Pleasure. Cheers.
So that was Dharmesh Sheth from Sky Sport News. We're going to be chatting to him throughout the transfer window, giving you the latest updates. If you've not done already, go and check out all the other videos on the channel. Make sure you are hitting like, share and subscribe. I've been Jay Motty. This has been a one-on-one interview. Thanks for watching.